And I mean, to his credit, he's been under the spotlight since he was drafted.
And really before, because he was number one prospect out of high school, expected to go number one in the draft, was like a maybe more respected than Drew Lock at Missouri at the time, and then it
Mhm.
all sort of came together where he got injured, and then he didn't really have that.
Yeah, and like he was off social media for a really long time because I'm checking some of his messages. Like a lot of the comments were just like, "Bro, get healthy, come play." Like really, when you think about it, it's not the player but the person. He had to deal with like a lot of scrutiny and just idiots like
Yeah.
commodifying his existence. So I get that, but he's had like a lot of pressure, and he's then moving to the last game, showing that okay, he's mentally tough enough to ride the waves of his own stupidity in ways and other people's stupidity, and still come out and know how to ball. Um,
So he his Miami game was 11 points and one rebound, and I think some of this was probably the media stuff. Like I think that he's young and he has proven that he is at times emotional, and I
mhm.
do think that that may have played some into it. But after the game, uh, he texted Malone and said, "Don't give up on me." And Malone was like, "I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying with you." Malone talked about how he really wanted to see the rebounding go up, and that was the thing that he felt like Michael Porter Jr. was missing. Porter comes out, not only has 37 points, a career high by far, he also has 12 rebounds and really helps propel the Nuggets to victory.
That just I got choked up a little bit because I love Michael Malone. Just thinking like 2 seasons ago, he's now arguably the best coach in Denver and perhaps one of the best.
He's not better than Bednar.
You know, okay, not better than Bednar. But Bednar doesn't have the personality to go with how good of a coach he is. Like,
Bednar is like, I think in some ways they're similar. Bednar never gets too excited. Malone will fluctuate in a way to mess with the refs,
hmm
but sorry. Continue with your Malone thing.
I just love
I just
Michael
had to
Malone.
defend Bednar there.
But the point about Porter Jr., I think one big thing in the stats you stated was the rebound discrepancy. Dude is actually he's like a really good rebounder, and I think regardless of whether he's shooting well, you can tell is he engaged in the game is if he's grabbing boards, especially defensive boards, because that kind of requires more work in terms of being focused because you're not trying to get a shot up after you get a defensive rebound the way that you do an offensive. So seeing him go from 1 to 12, I think that's really going to be the bedrock of his career in moments when he's not going to be the greatest shooter ever all the time. So when those shots aren't falling, I think the way for him to stay engaged and to keep his own confidence is to grab boards. So I think that's what I want to see more than anything. He may not repeat with 37 points. Certainly would love to see him like starting to average 20 for the rest of these seeding games, and then we can talk later about when everyone's healthy, exactly how many minutes he gets, does he start through the playoffs?
Well, and I mean, that really is becoming the question. So we're recording this before the Spurs game. We don't know if Murray will play today or not. Barton and Harris are both out again. And you have to start to wonder what kind of contributions both of those players will make. Barton has been iffy when he's come back sometimes from injuries, and it's taken him a long time to find his rhythm. I don't expect Harris to really make any sort of impact. It's really been the last 2 years where it feels like he's just been trying to get over one long injury,
Mm-hmm.
and we haven't seen the player before. So, I mean, do you disagree on either of those? Like, do you see either of them contributing, or do we need to start looking at this team as it's Murray, Jokic, and it has to be Porter and the supporting cast at this point?
Um, well, I mean, everything falls on their newest max player in Jamal Murray. If Jamal Murray is able to play to the level and consistency that, of course, like Tim Conley and ownership saw when they paid him, um, then we don't need to talk about Will Barton and Gary Harris. I think it's we need we need like 70% from at least one of those dudes in Harris and Barton, because you just can't rely on Torrey Craig to be an offensive player. In the same way that, especially Barton, like Barton at the beginning of the season, the Nuggets are holding on to the third seed because Barton was such a great, consistent player at the beginning of the season. So,
But do you actually see either of them coming back and adding that meaningful, given their history after injuries?
I have more faith in Barton than Harris, which, like, life comes at you real fast. That would not have been a statement I would have made almost at any other point. It was really just like, I don't want Gary to have that pressure on himself, but I just also don't see a space where he's going. I want him to be a decent defender and not to be a negative on offense, whereas Craig is a decent defender and almost assuredly a negative on offense. So that's all I have hopes for Harris, and I want Barton to be better than P.J. Dozier. So P.J. Dozier and Troy Daniels, who weirdly had the chance to like win the game in the fourth quarter, and after like how well Jokic and MPJ were playing, and Monte Morris for that matter, it was just weird to see the guy who had no minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it was
the
clear
clown
that
shot.
that was a broken play. It was never supposed to go
Yeah.
to him, and he should have passed it. I don't know what the thought was, especially because he wasn't even lined up for a three. Like, what? That's not his shot.
Yeah.
That was very weird.